All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Omar Mauji, and I'm the venture partner at CICE. I'm here to introduce the 2024 University Call for Innovation. It is our first University Call for Innovation, and it was really brought on by the fact that a lot of entrepreneurship programs at various universities that we had spoken to had issues around getting further funding to commercialize technologies and innovations coming out of the universities. So that was the main motivation for that. But before we continue on, um, I would just like to acknowledge that we are operating on the lands of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And this is efforts made by BCCICE to really have more representation of Indigenous entrepreneurs in our programs, and that's kind of an effort that we continue to make, and it's never quite finished. So, moving on to who CICE is, we are committed to having BC and the rest of the world reach net zero, and we do that through investing in innovation and technology. We're an independent nonprofit organization, and we were founded in the fall of 2021. We started really investing in 2022. We've raised $105 million from the BC government, from the federal government through an NRCan grant, and from our largest private funder, Shell Canada. And that has given us the opportunity to deploy that capital over the next 5 years from that 2022 date. Why does CIC exist, really? Like I said, our intention is to invest in technology and innovation that helps BC and the rest of the world reach net zero. And we do that through early stage, higher risk investments. We see ourselves as a catalytic investor. So we are usually operating at the point where companies have left the lab and are looking to validate their technology either with a partner or a customer or multiple customers. And so the outcome generally can sometimes be binary, and there's a lot of risk associated with it. And that's where we step in to provide that capital. In terms of what we're trying to accomplish here, it takes a lot of players. And that means that we need to incorporate everyone in terms of figuring out what are obstacles in helping us reach net zero. And we've built a climate first community around that. And that includes the participation of governments, non-government organizations, investors, innovators, industry, First Nations. So we try to get as much input as we can to truly understand where the gaps exist in BC and beyond, and fill those gaps with the investments we make in technology and innovation. In terms of the BC Centre for Innovation and Clean Energy's mandate, we focus solely on BC-based companies. So you have to be BC incorporated and also have some type of presence in BC for you to be eligible for funding. You have to have a TRL of 4 to 9, so technology readiness level of 4 to 9 in that technology and innovation phase. You have to fall within our 4 focus areas. So our 4 focus areas are low carbon hydrogen, low carbon fuels, carbon management, battery and energy storage. And you have to, the technology and innovation has to surround a reduction or removal of GHG emissions and a true pathway to commercialization. And those are the main goals that we're hoping to achieve through the funding that we provide earlier stage companies and technology and innovation in this space. Here is a brief list of the companies that we have funded to date. So our team at BCCICE has done incredible work in terms of finding the opportunities to fund. And in our first year of funding in 2022, we did around $3 million in funding. This year, we're on track to doing over $20 million in funding. We've funded 34 projects from 29 companies. Some of the companies you may not be able to see here, but these all are falling into our focus areas. And we're really excited to continue to do that work into next year and the year after that up until 2027. One of the companies that we will be highlighting in this presentation will be Moment Energy. And Moment Energy has really been through what we're proposing in the University Call for Innovation. And they've really gone through, a lot of the entrepreneurship programs at SFU, and then, created Moment Energy. Moment Energy really is a household name in early stage funding in BC. And I'm going to introduce to you the co-founder and chief operating officer of Moment Energy, Sumreen. Sumreen, if you could kind of introduce yourself and explain your story.
For sure, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Sumreen. I'm one of the 4 co-founders and COO at Moment Energy. So I started my own venture with 3 co-founders back in university. So to give you a little bit of background, I studied mechatronic systems engineering along with my 3 co-founders here that you can see. So we met in our first year of engineering at SFU, had almost every class together, got to know each other pretty well. We started an electric race vehicle team while we were at the university, called Team Phantom, which was the first of its kind, where the team was building an electric race car from scratch and still is today. But that was really our first dabble into the clean tech and clean energy space. And you can almost say entrepreneurship as well, because there's so many skills that you develop when you're a part of a student design team. And I think it laid the groundwork for us as a co-founding team for what was to come next, which was starting Moment Energy. But for us, we didn't start off as Moment Energy. We started off as a university capstone project, where in our final year of university, we joined SFU's technology entrepreneurship program, which essentially allowed us to turn our capstone into an entrepreneurial idea and then business. So we had brainstormed a ton of different ideas of try to look at different problems that we're passionate about solving. And at that time, we had narrowed down the list to a few different things, but one of them was helping people who suffer from anxiety by creating an assistive meditation tool. So we were designing a brain stimulating headband to help people cope with that. So this was very different from what we're doing now in the clean energy space. We did start off as a meditation company, you can say. So our company's name was Moment Meditate at that time. But we didn't stop as a capstone project. We continued on. We joined the university incubator, which is known as Venture Connection at SFU. And I know that tons of other universities have their own version of that. So we as a team decided that we wanted to continue down into entrepreneurship. We wanted to start our own company. So we decided to forego full-time jobs at the time and just fully focus on building a business. So this was back in 2019. It was a huge learning opportunity for us to go through the incubators, and we didn't have these huge funding opportunities like CICE is presenting here today. So it's definitely something that we could have leveraged at the time to continue our growth. But we got pretty creative with the ways that we were funding ourselves. Um, so to shorten up that part of the story, we ended up pivoting our idea completely at the end of 2019 and decided that our skills were better suited in the clean tech space and the clean energy space. And that really goes into Moment Energy, which is a company that we started to provide worldwide access to clean, reliable, and affordable power. And we would do this by enabling all EV batteries to be repurposed by 2030. So what Moment Energy, my startup, does is we provide clean, affordable, and reliable energy storage by repurposing retired electric vehicle batteries. So essentially, as a team, we had identified that there's going to be tons of electric vehicles on the road, and all of these electric vehicles have gigantic battery packs in them. But as it turns out, these battery packs, once they retire from the car, they still have an average of 80% of their original capacity. So that means that these batteries have significant useful life and can be used in alternative applications. So that's really where Moment steps in. We create a solution for these EV batteries so that they can be repurposed and deployed in alternative applications. So our company has grown quite significantly since we first started. So we had the four co-founders in 2019, and then now we have a team of 40 people, all based in British Columbia. And we have a huge amount of gratitude towards the organizations that have supported us to get here, including CICE, from which that we obtain funding, which I'll talk a little bit later about. So to tell you a bit about our story and how we started up, I talked about the background of Moment, but going from a university idea to actually commercializing a product takes a long time, and it takes a variety of skills. So when we started up in 2020 for Moment Energy with the idea of repurposing, we had to go out and kind of solve a twofold problem because we wanted to make sure that EV batteries aren't being disposed of unsafely, but we also needed to find an application for those batteries, customers who would benefit from a solution which came from that. And what we found was that there's tons of people who have unreliable power. So this includes remote areas that are dependent on diesel generators and fossil fuels for their power. It includes people that are living in areas that you would consider as a first world country, first world region where they don't have stable electricity, where power goes out for days at a time, and people have to congregate at a mutual site where there is only one building that has electricity in an entire neighborhood. So this is what we found, that even within Canada, there are tons of regions that have unstable electricity. So when we started digging into where second life batteries can be used, we found that the possibilities are endless. But we have to start somewhere. So we started reaching out to different Facebook groups online where people were living off grid, and tried to do customer discovery that way to understand how are these individual homeowners that are living off grid supporting their electricity needs. Are there any problems that they're facing with their current infrastructure? So we did a ton of direct customer discovery. We were talking to different people from off-grid living groups. We were talking to people that are running outdoor events, because we found that in cities and music festivals, a lot of these stages were being powered by diesel generators as well. So we talked to as many people as we could. And through that process, we ended up finding our first customer. So this first customer ended up being a professor from the University of Manitoba, who was actually looking for a battery energy storage solution to support their renewable energy research. So they had a center called the Canadian Hydrokinetic Turbine Test Center, just north of Winnipeg. So they wanted us to deploy our very first Second Life EV battery storage pack at that center. So this was, when we heard that this was something that they needed and that they were willing to pay for, it was music to our ears. We immediately thought, okay, we need to get this project out there as soon as we can. So as 4 engineers, we started to develop our first product for our customer in my parents' garage. So they graciously allowed us to use half the garage to develop our first prototype. So we got the EV batteries from a source, and we essentially built the battery pack. We used our skills that we had from our university engineering experience and the electric race vehicle team. And we built what you can see in this picture on the left-hand side, these 4 units together, which are all built from Nissan Leaf batteries. So then we took these battery packs and we put them in the back of a car, and we drove it across 3 provinces into Manitoba and installed it at our customer site, all during COVID. So that's why you can see these masks on our face at that time. But that was the first project that we ever did. And then since then, you can see that we essentially increased our project size from 5 kilowatt hours to 20 kilowatt hours to 120 kilowatt hours, which is right before we engaged with CICE. So the funding that we achieved from CICE was huge. So we obtained a $600,000 grant for the first project and a $1 million grant for the second project, which you can see both of them on this slide. And this was to commercialize our energy storage system so that it would be suitable for larger scale applications. So this includes the development of our technology portion as well as a system, an additional system that is essentially an iteration of what we've learned through all our work with customers, where they've given us feedback and said, hey, these are the features that we need to see in your future product offering. So that's another project that CICE is supporting us with, which is essentially the development of our next product. But all of this, I think it's been huge in terms of accelerating our commercialization efforts, and having a foothold in our economy here, especially in Canada, where we are now recognized as a battery energy storage provider and a company that focuses on safety and reliability. So it's been huge for us, and I think it would have been even at the time that we were in university, where funding like $75,000 for a team at that time, it would have been unheard of. So I'm really, really happy to hear that that's something that's being offered here today. Something that I wanted to show all of you as well is a video clip of one of our project deployments. So I'm just going to pull that up because this was something that we were able to do directly because of the support and funding we've gotten from CICE and other grant funding in Canada.
God's Pocket is a place to go and experience the wild. We primarily do scuba diving. We take people out in some of the best cold water diving in the world, spring and fall, and then we take people out kayaking and trips during the summer. My name's Klaus. I am co-owner of God's Pocket. So we're completely off-grid. We generate all of our own electricity. Right now, that's mainly diesel that we use to do that. And being an eco-lodge, we want to reduce our footprint as much as possible. The second I heard about what Moment does, I was very intrigued and curious. We have an aligned vision around reducing waste and reusing things that would just essentially, fill the landfill. Finding something that combines that with reducing our footprint otherwise is pretty incredible. Meeting the people from Moment, you really feel like everybody cares about what the actual outcome is. There's a lot of excitement around implementing this project here, and that matches our excitement, so it's a lot of fun to work with everybody at Moment. It's been an incredible journey. It's also just energizing to kind of bring the resort into the future in a way, right? Into something that's leveraging new technologies and still maintaining the rustic feel, actually even improving the rustic feel, because we won't hear the generators as much and we're even more immersed in the sort of nature aspect of this place.
I hope everyone was able to see that okay. Let me just, there we go. So I think I just have maybe 2 slides left. Yeah, so this kind of shows the trajectory of where we're headed as a company. So we've deployed about 5 projects so far, and one of them was at that beautiful lodge that you saw on that previous screen at God's Pocket Resort. But we also have some really exciting upcoming projects with Vancouver International Airport for supporting EV charging, as well as with Hydro Ottawa for improving grid reliability. So with all the support we've gotten, we're just accelerating, trying to improve our manufacturing at scale, and then focusing on growth of the company. So that's all I have for today. You can see how much our team has grown through the pictures on the slide. We have an awesome company culture. Definitely recommend investing in that over time. But thank you so much for listening to our story, and I'm more than happy to take any questions.
So Simran, we have one question here specifically around Moment. So what happens to the repurposed batteries when they reach end of life?
So for the repurposed batteries, once they're once they hit end of life in our systems, the batteries get recycled. So our goal essentially is to make sure the batteries go through a full circular economy, which means getting reused or repurposed with us and then getting recycled with our partners.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Samreen, for the presentation, and I hope you continue the momentum outside of the joke. But so I'll continue on with the university call for innovation. Um,
Thank you.
in terms of eligibility, so I saw a bunch of questions in the chat around eligibility. So who is this 2024 University Call for Innovation for? It is specifically geared towards the entrepreneurship programs at the 5 research-based universities in British Columbia. So we're working directly with E at UBC in Vancouver, E at UBC in Okanagan, SFU Venture Labs, UVIC Coast Capital Innovation Center, and UNBC Innovation Program. And the ventures that are part of these programs, the funding we provide will enable their scaling and their commercialization, specifically in the focus areas that we look at. In terms of the timeline, so I'm going to go on a bit of an aside because I feel this deserves a shout out. I'm not sure if Shannon Bard is on this call, but she has been a huge advocate for this program and worked with CICE back in the beginning of the summer. So just on the aside, I just want to say a huge shout out to Shannon Bard. But I'll continue on with the timeline. So right now where we're at is this is a webinar to introduce our intake for January 22nd, 2024. So we will open intake applications from the January 22nd date to March 4th, 2024. After March 4th, we'll then begin preliminary assessments of the ventures that have applied to CICE. And we'll create a short list, and that short list of companies will be notified of their status on March 15th, 2024. Once that is concluded, we will start due diligence. So due diligence will include financial due diligence, legal due diligence, technical due diligence, as well as interviews, and ultimately a presentation for the investment committee. Once that has concluded on April 12th, 2024, we will let those ventures that have been selected for funding or to move to the funding agreement stage to be notified on April 25th, 2024. And then ultimately the funding agreements will be signed and cash, will be dispersed by that May 3rd date of 2024, and we'll officially announce the recipients of the funding on May 14th, 2024. So those are key dates to keep in mind. In terms of how many ventures will be funded and how much will they receive. So the way this works is each entrepreneurship program that I had previously mentioned in the 5 BC-based research universities will be given the opportunity to nominate up to 3 ventures for the application process. So that is a total potential of 15 ventures that will come through the entrepreneurship programs themselves. So it's important to note that you don't actually apply directly to CICE, you apply through your entrepreneurship program. From that, up to 12 ventures may be funded by CICE, and this all depends on the quality of applications that come through. Each venture will receive upfront $75,000. That means if all 12 ventures that come up to the short list are funded, that's equivalent to $900,000 for this program in total. In terms of how does this nomination and application intake process work, I've seen a lot of questions around eligibility. This all occurs through the entrepreneurship programs. So the 5 entrepreneurship programs mentioned will nominate. However they do that, they will nominate 3 applications to move forward to CICE. And those leads at the entrepreneurship programs will be submitting each application to us directly in order to avoid direct applications from applicants. Each entrepreneurship program will nominate these 3 applications during that period of January 22nd to March 4th, 2024. And the entrepreneurship program lead themselves will submit it directly to CICE. Once that is occurred, CICE will deal directly with the venture itself. So they will be notified directly by a CICE representative whether they have made it through to the shortlist, and then whether they have made it through the due diligence program. There'll be constant contact between a CICE representative and the venture through that process. Now, if you want to know who the leads are at each program, so we have the 5 programs listed here. You have Sean Lum at Entrepreneurship at UBC Vancouver. You have Jerome Etwaru at UVIC Coast Capital Innovation Center. You have Kyla Cartledge from Entrepreneurship at UBC Okanagan, Leslie Duncan at SFU Venture Labs, and Mark Barnes at UNBC's Entrepreneurship Program. So these are the members that you need to get into contact with if you have a climate solution and you're part of that entrepreneurship program. Please reach out to them and reach out to us if you have any other questions. We'd be happy to kind of coordinate all of this as well. So the question around the funding, the $75,000, is when can the funding be used? And the answer, or the simple answer here, is it can be used immediately. It's upfront funding. You will get it immediately once we sign the funding agreement, obviously pending the timing between getting funding in the bank. But really what we will use as a guide is the ventures will provide us with a use of proceeds. So they'll notify us what those use of proceeds will be and a guide around the timing of the deployment of those use of proceeds. And we'll use that as a benchmark when it comes to check-ins with the ventures through the process. But ultimately, it can be used immediately once it's received. How can the funding be used? So this varies from CIC's traditional funding. We are providing upfront funding, which is different from our regular program. And the funding will be used for any corporate purposes. So that is also different from our traditional sources of funding. You can use this funding from anywhere to establishing a venture, nominal salaries, work plan development, corporate development, and fundraising, which I know is very important for a lot of early stage companies, operating and capital expenses, legal and IP costs, and R&D costs. Now, this list here doesn't limit the amount. It's just, these are examples of what it can be used with. Anything related to corporate, the venture itself and its corporate purpose is what funding can be used for. We obviously don't want any frivolous use of funds, so just keep it at the corporate purposes. And we will run periodic check-ins to ensure that this is being done. In terms of what are the stacking rules and co-funding opportunities in this program, CICE does not have any stacking restrictions. Other funders may see CICE as government funding, and so they may have restrictions on us, but CICE does not have any stacking restrictions on other sources of funding. All of the ventures that go through the University Call for Innovation will be eligible for future funding from CICE. The condition is that they complete the University Call for Innovation in order to be eligible for CICE's traditional sources of funding. We will also be working with ventures to help them secure additional funding, either through public or private sources. So we definitely do have quite a hands-on approach in terms of helping companies get to that commercialization stage. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them on this call. Additionally, you can reach out to us at info@cice.ca, and you can reach out to us on our socials at LinkedIn and Twitter, or X, I guess now it's called. So yeah. Are there any questions that came through?
Hi, Omar. Great
Stacey.
presentation. Thank you. Yes, there are a number of questions that have come through, and we'll start by going through a few in the chat here. Is one of the program requirements to have graduated from a university accelerator, incubator, entrepreneurship program? Are ventures that are currently in an incubator or accelerator still eligible?
Yeah, so the answer to that question is the 5 entrepreneurship programs listed. If you're part of those 5 entrepreneurship programs and you're eligible for those entrepreneurship programs, you are eligible to apply to CICE. But remember that this is done through the entrepreneurship program lead. So I ask that you reach out to those leads if you have interest in applying to this program, and see if you would be nominated or eligible.
Great. Is the fund limited to 75K?
Yes, so we have limited the amount, and everyone will get the same amount of funding. It'll be $75,000 upfront. However, there are opportunities for follow-on funding. So if you've completed the program and you move on to secure CICE follow-on funding through our traditional sources of funding, we've been known to, I think, fund an average check size of around $600,000 to $700,000 for project-based funding. So there are, future opportunities once you finish the program.
Great. And someone is asking if you can clarify if this is an equity investment or a grant.
This is a grant, so there are no conditions tied to it. It's a grant. You just have to finish the program.
Okay. Here's another question that I think was a follow-on. Are you supposed to be graduated from a specific program from the specified universities to be eligible to submit the application? So a little more clarity around that.
Yeah, so around that, which is why we've left it in the hands of each entrepreneurship program. Each different entrepreneurship program will have different requirements to be eligible for their program. So the simplest answer to that is, as long as you're part of those 5 programs that we've mentioned, you're eligible. So reach out to those representatives to make sure that they're aware of who you are and that you may be nominated for funding.
Great. Okay. Noted that funding priority will be given to ventures that are aligned with CICE's 4 priority areas. Does that mean if we do not align, we should not apply?
Yeah. And again, we'll be working with the leads at each entrepreneurship program. They are aware that all applicants must fall within our focus areas of low carbon hydrogen, low carbon fuels, battery energy and storage, and carbon management.
Okay. And then there's someone that has just written in, we are a startup working on prediction of wildfires in order to reduce spreading the wildfires and reduce the carbon emissions. I am wondering if the area of the focus of our work makes us eligible for this program.
Yeah, so as long as you can show that the 2 priorities that we're focused on is that this technology can commercialize and it actually reduces GHG emissions, as long as that's justified, you're eligible.
Okay.
And you fall under, obviously, the other 2 requirements is that you're a BC-based corporation and that you fall within the TRL 4 to 9.
Okay. I am an MBA from UVIC 2020. My company is based in Alberta. Am I an eligible applicant?
So if you're eligible for the UVIC Coast Capital entrepreneurship program, then you're eligible to apply. Yes.
Great. And then there's a question about whether or not the deck will be shared afterwards, and the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, is a venture eligible to apply if it is incorporated but still doesn't have a signed IP agreement with the university?
Sorry, could you repeat that question again?
Is a venture eligible to apply if it is incorporated but still doesn't have a signed IP agreement with the university?
Yes, yeah, that is fine. We don't have IP restrictions on it.
Great. Regarding eligibility criteria, would you consider companies that have low sustainability alternatives versus current techniques?
Again, so I guess the way I'd put it, so in the application process, we will be asking you what effect you have on GHG reduction or removals. If you can explain well enough that your GHG emissions from the current technology and innovation you're working on are less than the benchmark, then yeah, I would say definitely reach out to your entrepreneurship program lead and let them know your technology.
Great. And to clarify, there was another question. Does the enterprise need to be already registered as a company?
Yes, it does. So in order to qualify, you have to be a BC-based corporation.
Okay. We are a startup focusing on making buildings more efficient and reducing GHG emission. Are we eligible?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what you do to reduce emissions for buildings, but if you reduce emissions from buildings, yeah, I would say you're eligible for the program.
Great, okay. A couple of more questions have just come in. Let me see. Does CICE host water-related challenges as well, or only emissions?
We do not look at water-related challenges. There are other programs that do look at that. One would be Innovate BC, stuff like that, but we're mainly focused on energy-related GHG emissions.
Okay. I don't know how to measure GHG emissions, but we know it's less than traditional methods. Is this good enough for qualification?
Yeah, absolutely. So some companies will be at different stages. Some will have life cycle analysis, some won't. As long as you can prove to us, and it's rational, because we go through due diligence to audit the GHG emissions that are reported to us. As long as you can justify the calculations and understanding around how your technology reduces GHG emissions from a benchmark, you are eligible to apply. So don't think that that's a quality that will omit you from the process.
Okay. We are more like a TRL3. Am I too early to apply?
You are too early to apply. So once you get to that TRL4, do apply to our program. That's part of our mandate. There are programs that also, again, I'm going to shout out Innovate BC. They do look at TRL, I believe TRL 3 to 7. So you may be better suited for that program, but once you get to TRL 4, please take a look at our program.
Great. I am on a student visa from India. Can I still apply?
Yeah, as long as your venture is incorporated in BC and you have other members on your team, yeah, please do apply.
Okay, and here's a question that's interesting, and I think it's a clarification on the timeline, Omar, but is there a benefit to applying in January versus in March? Or do you only start review in April, and it doesn't matter when you apply? So maybe we just need to reiterate the schedule and the timeline a little bit there.
Yeah, so the window of intake of applications will be between January 4th, 2024 and March 4th, 2024. So we will not be doing any assessment until past the March 4th, 2024 date. So it doesn't matter when you get those in. And those submissions will come directly from the entrepreneurship program lead.
Great. Can you clarify what this funding can be used for and what it can't be used for?
So an example would be, can be used for any corporate purposes. So if you have to, if you have to hire someone to do work on whatever the company's working for, that's eligible. Any capital expenditures are eligible. We just ask that you don't be frivolous with the funding. So, trip to Disneyland for the team is not eligible. But anything that relates to corporate purpose and raising funding and getting the technology forward and moving on a commercialization plan, that's all covered under this $75,000 that we're providing you with.
Okay. Does the base idea, considering it passes the requirements, need to be novel?
The base idea for the technology?
I'm assuming that it would be the technology or the solution being put forward. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be just a novel technology. It can be a novel business idea. That's why we specify it can be a technology and innovation. So it can be anything that's new in terms of implementing an existing technology in a new industry. That's fine as well. Those are kind of what we're looking for to fund.
Great. When will we get what's needed for the application process?
So we will be shortly having a discussion with each of the leads of the entrepreneurship programs around the application process. We'll be in touch with them in relation to who and how their nomination process will work. But at that January 22nd, 2024 date, if I guess you're chosen by those entrepreneurship programs, they will likely reach out to you and request that you fill out the application information. The application information will consist of basically a expression of interest, which is in the form of a slide deck, as well as a video submission.
Great. And if you go to the CICE website right now, you will find the application guidelines, etc. So
Yeah.
definitely do that. Okay. And we have a couple more questions that have come in. Let's see. My venture is a climate adaptation technology company. Does that align with our area? Water quality forecasting due to climate impact, increasing climate resiliency of water infrastructure.
Yeah, so unfortunately that would likely not be eligible. It's more around sustainability than it is around our 4 focus areas.
During due diligence, do you require fully audited financials or a notice to reader is enough?
We will, so depending on the stage of the company, we will request financial information. If they aren't audited, we'll obviously have to do further due diligence on the financials, but it's not kind of a prerequisite in order to move along to the next round.
Okay. Can a company be a member of another accelerator, or does it need to be a member or graduate of the 5 partner organizations?
So you have to be a member of the 5 organizations that were mentioned. There may be instances where some organizations reach out to other accelerators for intake, but that is up to the entrepreneurship program themselves. So we can't dictate that.
Okay, we have another water-related question. Could you clarify the position on supporting water-related technologies? Considering the water energy nexus, water provision, and wastewater treatment savings reduce energy consumption as well as GHGs. Would these solutions not be considered because they are more water-based?
Yeah, so water solutions is not necessarily what we're focused on. We're more focused on energy solutions. So our focus areas align very closely with that, with the energy solutions that we're seeing. I would have to kind of, maybe if you could send me an email or send our info at CICE an email around the specific project or technology that you're working on, we can give you further insight, but just generally sustainability around water is not something that we fund.
Right. And when will funds be released?
So funds will be released so once we've signed the agreement and there's been a public release as to who we've funded, I guess really it's just a timing thing between when that funding agreement is signed and when cash comes into the bank for each venture. So it'll likely be, however long a bank takes to accept that amount of funding.
Okay, and here's a follow-on. Is it milestone based or do we get the money up front?
So this program is not milestone based. You get all the money up front. What we will use as a guide for what you've funded with that money will be the use of proceeds. There will be a part in the application process where we look at your use of proceeds and the timing of your use of proceeds, and we'll use that as a guide for CICE. But you do get all the money up front.
Okay. If we have a technology that seems to be eligible, but is not from one of the 5 organizations, is there another way to apply for funding from CICE?
So we will be announcing future intake programs at CICE, but understand that these programs align more with our common form of funding. So what we provide in terms of funding is project-based, project-related, reimbursement-based, non-dilutive funding. So it is different from the program we're talking about right now.
Great. Does CICE plan to start funding lower TRLs, example, teams that are still at the university?
Currently, as it stands, we do not have the intention of funding lower TRLs.
Okay. Is there a plan for this call to be open in 2025 as well?
Yes, the intention is that upon the success of this first program that we've launched, we plan on both repeating this the following year and potentially expanding it.
Excellent. Well, at that point, oh, we have one other question that have come in. They're starting to trickle a little bit slower. What is the duration for using the fund?
So we don't have a specific deadline, but we're looking at, based on the intakes that we'll have from the CICE program, the recommendation is that all funds are used by the end of the calendar year for 2024. However, that is not a strict restriction. But we do prefer that this funding be used over a maximum of 2 years.
Okay. And with that, Omar, I think we've managed to answer the majority of folks' questions. If we have missed yours or if you have other questions, definitely reach out to the info@cice.ca email. We'll be happy to help you out.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending, and we look forward to the great applications that will come in through this program. Again, yeah, reach out at any time. If you see my face and my name, reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. Yeah, thank you so much for attending. Really appreciate it. All right, take care.
Thanks, everyone.